have Birdie here. He's a 15-year-old Goffin cockatoo, and Birdie has a story to tell. Birdie was just adopted a day ago, and he was adopted from a rescue. We don't know how or why he ended up in rescue. The owner described the cage that he was housed in similar to the size of a canary cage. And if you look at his tail feathers, he's broken many of his tail feathers. They're bent, and that's often from a perch being against the cage. The feathers go through, they break and damage the feathers. The important story that he has to tell is he has feather destructive behavior. And if you look at his back, very clearly he has ragged feathers. The little barbules are all broken down, and he's done this all over his back and then also over his crop. This area is just a little ruffled looking, and that's because he's actually plucked some feathers out in that area. And on the side of his leg, you can see very sparse feathering. They're just very ragged and irregular. And this is basically an over-grooming behavior, where it's gone from a normal grooming behavior to a compulsive behavior. And so instead of just cleaning his feathers, he's literally chewing on them, and as that progresses, they go on to picking, which he's done some of that as well. The next step is actual mutilation. With mutilation, you'll see skin wounds, and the skin wounds can be very severe, often lead to a lot of secondary infections, and I've seen many that are life-threatening, including lacerations over the crop or even through the crop or the body cavity. So this is not just a cosmetic problem in birds. This is a much bigger problem. If you have a bird that has ruffled looking feathers or bald spots or skin lesions, they need to be seen by an avian vet ASAP. And unfortunately in Goffin cockatoos, I've seen a lot of this. They're kind of known for this behavior. Goffins and also Moluccans I've seen quite a bit. And so Goffins in general, I tend to think of as a pretty active or busy little cockatoo. And we put them in a cage with a full bowl of food and water and no friends, and then we ask them to be emotionally and mentally stable. And that's asking too much. We need to supply more than that. So what should we do? Number one, we do blood work and a health check. We make sure they're normal, that there's not a problem causing this, that they're not acting out because they feel sick. So normal liver values and kidney values. Hi. We check the electrophoresis and make sure there's no hidden or occult inflammation. We check the feces, make sure there's no parasites. So a health check is step number one. Step number two, and all the other steps, deal with environment and making sure it's perfect. So when we have a feather destructive bird, we want to give them optimal needs. So we try to make sure that they have the ability to bathe every day. I often recommend a shower perch. We don't put them directly under the shower. They may be afraid, but let them shower with you and gradually moving it closer. We try to make sure that they're on a very balanced, complete diet. So I do recommend Harrison's pellets because it's organic and it's color-free, dye-free, very important. And then an assortment of veggies on top of that. Vegetables I love for birds because it's a foraging activity. They tear them up, they shred them, they interact with them. It takes longer to eat them. So I give an assortment of vegetables as well. I usually do provide a UV light to these birds. I make sure that their daylight hours are structured so we don't keep them awake all day and all night like we often are. And just covering the cage is often not enough to provide nighttime or bedtime because they'll make little windows and peek out because they want to see what we're doing. So a bedtime cage in a dark room is ideal at a set time every day so they're not sleep deprived. And then we do a ton of foraging. So we try to keep them mentally and physically stimulated all day. This is particularly important if we're at work all day and they're alone in the cage without another bird. There's tons of ideas out there for foraging, but simple ideas are basically to take a tiny treat or tiny reward and create a big effort to get the reward. And so if we have commercial toys that they do a little activity and then they have this full bowl of treats, I don't recommend it. It doesn't have value. We want them working for the treat and keeping on working for the next one. So they're thinking and moving and interacting all day long if we're not there. And so simple ideas are like a sliver of an almond in a Dixie cup or a paper cup. You wad it up. We have to tear the cup open to get out that little tiny sliver. And then we may put handfuls of these in there. Paper towel rolls, toilet paper rolls, same thing. Put little treats in. Roll the ends, we have to tear them open. If you have books you no longer like, you can actually stick little treats in between the pages and let them shred and tear up the book. The moral of the story is if you're doing foraging right, the bird has made a big mess and that's a win. So we try to make sure that all of their needs are met and that we're not stressing them by not meeting one of these needs while we work on their general health. These birds are a work in progress. We often think about getting them into remission and not curing them. We always have to work on their environmental and mental stimulation and avoidance of these behaviors. And a very important note that many of us fail at is if you have a feather picking bird, do not scold the bird, do not interact with the bird, do not talk to the bird, do not look at the bird when the bad behavior is occurring. For a cockatoo in particular, that's a win. They always want interaction, and they don't care if from your perspective it's negative. And so if they get interaction when they're chewing, they're going to do more of the same. So the best thing you can do is, if we have a negative behavior occurring, whether it be chewing, plucking, or screaming, leave the room, remove your presence, because your presence is what they want. So to ensure that you're not training a bad behavior, you focus on all the good behaviors you want, and you reward and interact for those behaviors, and you will see more of those behaviors. So we ignore the feather picking, we ignore the screaming, and if we're moving normally around the cage, if we're playing with toys, if we're eating appropriate items, if we're mumbling, we rush to the cage and we reward and interact, and you'll see more of that behavior. That's our Goffin cockatoo.